Welcome to Bookish Mind, Season 05, Episode 13, where we join Daniel Goleman Focus to explore a critical human challenge: our inherent difficulty in perceiving the complex systems that define our lives. Today, we're taking a deep dive into what's often called system blindness. That pervasive struggle we humans face to truly see the intricate patterns and connections that govern our world. Whether it's an ancient natural ecosystem or the most complex modern industry.
Right. It's something we encounter everywhere, even if we don't always recognize it.
And here's the hook that really grabbed me. How did ancient cultures, long before any of our technology, possess this incredible systems awareness that seems to have, well, faded in our own reliance on tech? We're going to explore that fascinating contrast today. We'll talk about Polynesian navigators crossing vast oceans, guided only by nature.
Amazing stuff.
To the baffling hidden waste in our modern supply chains, and even the subtle, often missed signals of climate change. So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack why. Why are our brains seemingly unwired for understanding these crucial systems? And what are the consequences, for us as individuals and for our collective future?
Exactly.
This is all about gaining knowledge quickly but thoroughly, trying to give you those aha moments about why certain problems just seem so intractable, why they don't go away, and maybe how you might start seeing them differently. Okay, let's unpack this with a truly mind-blowing example. Imagine being in the middle of the vast South Pacific.
Hard to even picture.
Right. Nothing but open ocean for weeks, yet knowing exactly where you are and where you're going. No GPS, no maps, nothing. That's what Mau Piailug could do. He was the last surviving native practitioner of the ancient Polynesian art of wayfinding, born back in 1932.
Incredible.
He could read the stars, the clouds, the ocean swells, the birds in flight, almost like they were a living GPS screen.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating here, what wayfinding embodies at its absolute height, is this profound systems awareness. Mao wasn't just seeing isolated things,
Right.
He was reading a complex, integrated system of natural cues. He'd pick up on the slightest variations, the temperature or saltiness of seawater, tiny bits of flotsam, plant debris,
Wow.
the precise patterns of seabird flight, even the warmth, speed, and direction of winds, and crucially, subtle shifts in wave swells, the rising and setting of specific stars.
So much information.
Exactly. And all this data was mapped against an incredibly detailed mental model, learned through generations, native stories, chants, dances. It's really a testament to holistic perception, not just seeing pieces.
It's just astonishing, isn't it? And this deep integrated knowledge allowed Mao to pilot a Polynesian-style canoe.
Yeah.
Get this, 2,361 miles from Hawaii to Tahiti in 1976.
That voyage was huge.
It really opened eyes, showing that ancient islanders weren't just randomly drifting. They could routinely navigate the South Pacific two-way traffic between distant islands. And while Mao's Pacific lore was sadly a dying art, his journey actually stirred this powerful revival in wayfinding among native peoples, a renewed interest that continues today.
He even held the ancient initiation ceremony, again, first time in 50 years, training a handful of students. It shows it can be revitalized. And if we step back for a moment, this kind of native lore, passed down generation to generation, it exemplifies what we call local knowledge. For native peoples everywhere, it's been absolutely crucial for survival, thriving in their specific ecological niche. Think about it, knowing which plants are toxic, which heal.
Or nourish, yeah.
Where to find water, how to gather food, reading the signs of seasonal change. This systems awareness, this ability to detect and map patterns hidden in nature, it was driven by an urgent survival imperative, understanding the local ecosystem.
Makes sense.
But here's the critical point Goleman makes. Our biology is prepared for basic survival, eating, sleeping, mating, fight or flight. But we don't have specific neural systems dedicated to understanding these larger, often invisible systems.
So our brains aren't naturally wired for it.
Not directly. Not for perceiving these vast, invisible systems in the same way we perceive, say, immediate danger.
That's a striking contrast. And one of Mao's students, Elizabeth Kapuelani Lindsay, she's a Hawaii-born anthropologist, National Geographic explorer. She's dedicated to what she calls ethnographic rescue.
Right, conserving vanishing indigenous knowledge.
Exactly. And she points out that much of this loss is due to acculturation, colonization,
Yeah.
governments often marginalizing native wisdom.
And this lore was so deeply embedded, wasn't it? Lindsay explained how Hawaiian dance, hula, wasn't just entertainment.
No.
No, it was a code of movement and chants that told our genealogy, astronomy, and natural laws. The whole backstory of their culture, the movements, the chants, the drums, sounds, all encoding complex systems knowledge. These were sacred practices. But when missionaries arrived, they deemed them immoral, suppressed them. It was only during a cultural renaissance in the 1970s that the ancient hula kahiko, started to reemerge.
It really highlights how quickly vital systems knowledge can just disappear when the cultural practices holding it are lost.
Within a generation, sometimes.
And the consequences of losing that attunement, they can be catastrophic. Think about the Moken Sea nomads.
The 2004 tsunami example, yeah.
Right. Just before that devastating wave hit the islands where they lived in the Indian Ocean, the Moken realized something was wrong. The birds had stopped singing. The dolphins were swimming farther out to sea.
Subtle cues.
Subtle cues they understood. So they all climbed into their boats, traveled to deep ocean where the tsunami crest was minimal as it passed. Not one Moken was hurt.
It's such a powerful story, and it's not just about escaping a disaster, is it? It's a stark reminder that our modern detachment from natural rhythms can turn subtle cues into catastrophic blind spots. True systems awareness, passed down, acts as this indispensable early warning system. Contrast that with other people in the region who'd forgotten to listen to the birds or watch the dolphins. They perished.
Tragic.
Lindsay also told this anecdote about picking flowers from her elders. They taught her, when you go into the forest for lays or medicine, you take only a few blossoms, a few leaves from each limb.
So it looks untouched.
Exactly. So the forest looks like you were never there. Today, she observes, kids might go in with plastic garbage bags and just break off branches.
Oh, wow.
This ecological intelligence, this systems awareness, it can vanish from collective memory in a single generation if the ways of passing it on disappear. It's an incredible loss.
What I find most fascinating, maybe, is how this system blindness plays out even now. In our hyper-advanced, data-rich modern world, can you shed some light on how it shows up in unexpected places?
Yeah, you'd think we'd be better at it, right? With all our tech. But modern system blindness often involves issues that are right in front of us, yet they stay invisible because we're just not looking at the whole picture. Take this dilemma faced by a major national retailer. Their magazine buyers discovered that. Get this. Close to 65% of all magazines printed in the United States were never sold.
65%?
Yeah.
That's staggering.
Hundreds of millions of dollars in annual cost, just wasted.
It feels like something out of a comedy sketch, doesn't it? But then they realized no one party in the system could change it alone. That's the key, right?
It's absolutely the key. That's often how these systemic inefficiencies look when you finally pull back the curtain. The core problem: supply chains built for what could be sold, not for sustainability or waste reduction.
Ah, okay.
So when one part optimized for itself, it tended to sub-optimize the whole system, like advertisers paid based on magazines printed, not sold.
Ah, so there's no incentive to reduce print runs if they aren't selling.
Pretty much. A magazine could sit on a shelf, get pulped, but the advertiser already paid. The solution involved getting everyone, the retailer, publishers, distributors, together, getting the system into the room.
Makes sense.
The retailer analyzed sales data, which magazines sold best, where, and adjusted distribution. These fixes cut waste by up to 50%. Saved money, opened up shelf space.
Wow.
The key insight, really, is that optimizing individual parts without understanding the whole system, it just creates unintended waste. You have to see the entire system.
That's a perfect illustration. And John Sturman from MIT's Sloan School of Management, a leading systems expert, he has this fundamental point, what we call side effects.
Yeah.
They're misnamed.
Right. In a system, there are no side effects, just effects, anticipated or not.
What we see as side effects just reflects our flawed understanding of the system itself. Cause and effect might be way more distant in time and space than we think.
Exactly. Sturman uses the example of zero-emission electric cars. Great idea, right? But from a systems view, are they truly zero emission if the electricity comes from coal plants?
Good point.
Or if manufacturing the solar panels, powering their supply chains, produces emissions? It's classic tunnel vision, looking at just one part. And one of the worst results of this blindness is when leaders implement a strategy to fix something but ignore these system dynamics. It's insidious, Sturman says.
How so?
You get short-term relief, maybe, but then the problem comes back often worse than before.
We see this all the time, don't we? Traffic jams, that's a great relatable example.
Perfect example.
A short-sighted fix. build more roads, wider roads. And yeah, initially congestion eases up a bit,
For a little while.
but then people, stores, workplaces, they spread out because it's easier to get around now. And long term, traffic increases until the jams are just as bad, maybe worse. Traffic grows until it's so unpleasant people stop taking more trips. We literally build our way into more traffic.
Exactly. Sturman calls these feedback loops. More road capacity leads to more car trips, people moving farther away, buying more cars.
And mass transit suffers.
Right. As people spread out, mass transit loses viability. You're trapped in this cycle. And we blame that traffic jam or those drivers.
Instead of the system itself.
Precisely. As Sturman notes, much of the time, people attribute what happens to them to events close in time and space, when it's really the result of the dynamics of the larger system they're embedded in.
So what does this all mean for us, hearing all this? Ancient navigators, modern traffic. It makes you wonder, what's going on in our brains? Why are we so prone to this system blindness?
Is there a cognitive bias? Yes, it points towards something called the illusion of explanatory depth.
Okay, what's that?
It's where we feel confident we understand a complex system, but actually our knowledge is pretty superficial.
Ah, like thinking you know how a zipper works until you try to explain it step by step.
Exactly. Or try explaining in detail how the electric grid operates, or even why increasing atmospheric CO2 ups the energy in storms. The illusion breaks down fast. Our system's understanding is often shallower than we think.
Okay, let's dive deeper then. Why do our brains struggle so much with this? Goleman points back to our evolution, right?
Yes. Our brains were really molded by what helped us survive in the wild, especially during the Pleistocene epoch. We're finely tuned for immediate, tangible threats.
Like that rustling in the leaves that might be a tiger.
Exactly. Our perceptual system is built for that kind of instant danger detection. Crucial for survival back then.
What?
But here's the problem. We have no direct perceptual apparatus for sensing, say, the thinning ozone layer or the carcinogens in smoggy air.
Even though they can be fatal.
Eventually, yes. But our brain has no direct radar for these diffuse, slow-moving threats. It's not just perception, it's our emotional circuitry, too. The amygdala, triggering fight or flight.
Yeah.
It floods us with hormones for immediate danger, that tiger, but it hardly blinks if we hear about potential dangers years or centuries away. Our automatic circuitry just draws a blank on long-term systemic dangers.
That's a really profound point. Elk Weber, a psychologist at Columbia, observes it's easier to override an automatic bottom-up response than it is to deal with the complete absence of a signal.
And that's our situation with big environmental issues.
As she puts it, there's nothing here in the Hudson Valley on this lovely summer day to tell me the planet is warming. No immediate tiger in the leaves signal for climate change.
That's the absolute core of it. There's no bottom-up message for these long-term dangers, climate change, our long-term health, retirement savings. Weber gives examples. Eat a rich dessert. No signal says, keep this up, you'll die 3 years earlier. Buy that spunky second car. Nothing says, you'll regret this when you're old and destitute.
No immediate visceral alert.
None. And that absence of immediate feedback makes it incredibly hard to prioritize these long-term systemic things.
And think about the challenge for global issues. Dr. Larry, who works on fighting global warming, puts it bluntly. I have to persuade you that there's an odorless, tasteless, invisible gas gathering in the heavens, capturing the sun's heat because of fossil fuels. It's a heavy lift.
You don't say. And you've got the IPCC, right?
Right.
Over 2,000 scientists laying out the evidence.
That's comprehensive science.
Trying to convince people who are simply not wired for this kind of distant, diffuse threat. Unless you live somewhere like the Maldives or Bangladesh, where rising seas are immediate.
It feels far away.
It feels far away. The dimension of time is a huge problem. If warming happened over a few years instead of centuries, people would pay more attention. But it's like the national debt, leave it for future generations, right? They'll figure it out. As Sturman observes, only the leaf rustling problems get our attention, not the big ones that will kill us.
The irony is just striking. At one time, human survival absolutely depended on ecological attunement, being deeply aware of natural systems.
It was everything.
Today, we have the luxury maybe of living well, using artificial aids, or we think we do. But this very reliance, this indifference to the state of the natural world, it comes at our peril. It's a dangerous trade-off. So we've journeyed from the incredible systems awareness of ancient wayfinders like Mau Piailug
Reading the ocean like a map.
to our modern struggle with these complex, often invisible challenges. We've seen how our innate wiring, once vital for immediate survival, now leaves us kind of ill-equipped for the large, slow-moving systems defining our lives. Wasteful supply chains, climate change.
Yeah.
Understanding these systems isn't just academic. It feels critical for navigating reality, for our collective future.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the core challenge is clear. We seem curiously unable to perceive in a way that leads us to prevent the bad outcomes of human systems.
It's a disconnect.
It's a fundamental disconnect in how our brains process the world. So, to meet these challenges, impending system collapse, global dilemmas, we need, Goleman suggests, what amounts to a prosthesis for the mind.
A prosthesis for the mind. What does that mean?
Ways to make the invisible palpable, to extend our perception beyond the immediate, the obvious, beyond the leaf rustling to the slow burn problems. We need new tools, new ways of seeing.
So as you reflect on this deep dive, here's a final provocative thought for you. Given that our brains aren't naturally wired for these large, complex, distant systems, how might you begin to cultivate your own prosthesis for the mind? What subtle cues in your daily life or in the world around you might you be missing? Cues that, if you perceive them, could lead to better outcomes for yourself and for others. Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep observing, keep questioning, and keep exploring the hidden systems in your world.